one, Bank of India, PSU banks, one by one or individually as well. Collectively, both have been doing pretty well. We've seen a good recovery in the last 2 weeks for PSU banks, and I think Bank of India has given a strong breakout today about the 77, 78 mark. So would suggest that as a buy. Targets to be kept at approximately 88 and stop loss to be kept at 72. And the second stock which I'm suggesting is a buy in Lalpath Labs. Now it's interesting because after almost a 10 to 15% of a steady drop or a correction, the stock is somehow trying to resurface its from the downward trends on the daily charts as well as on the weekly time frame. It's breaking out of an interesting indicator pattern. That's a parabolic pattern which generally leads to a reversal of the short-term trend. So would suggest the bond Lalpath Labs as well for a positional target of approximately 3,000 and stop loss at 2,777.
All right, Gaurang, what are your high risk and low risk ideas for us today? Good morning.
Alex, and morning to all of you all. So, long-term fundamental low-risk ideas are in form of first one is from the FMCG pack, which came out with a stellar set of numbers, I think about a week, 10 days back. We have been maintaining a positive view on Godrej consumer products for a long time, and after looking at the numbers that we saw, we have maintained our buy recommendation. At the same time, we have upgraded our targets to 930. I think the momentum continues across product verticals, and they have got a good product mix, both presence locally as well as globally. Comes from a great pedigree, Godrej Group, and we expect this company to deliver much better returns as we go forward from here on. The second one is from the power generation stroke solar energy penetration that the company has just ventured into, and the stock is Tata Power. This is one stock which was finding it difficult to move about 80-100 for a pretty long period of time. But on fallback of earnings and the penetration into solar energy, our sense is that the business outlook looks pretty strong. Targeting about 120, which is a conservative target from where the stock is trading. But we're quite confident, Alex, that if the earnings are going to deliver better than expected, then the target gets revised upwards.
All right, so those are the picks coming in from Gaurang as well. Time for our queries, and this is the first query coming in from Aman on YouTube, and he wants to know what sort of a target should he look at for Dr. Reddy's. Kunal, Dr. Reddy's, how are the charts looking like for this particular counter?
Very attractive, Cheryl. Many of these pharma stocks that are going through a strong trending, rally. Dr. Reddy recovered exceedingly well. So from a point of I think 4,100, 4,130, the bottom in the month of March, it's done pretty well for itself. Managed to recoup and recover the previous couple of months of losses for itself. So it's been a good steady recovery. Again, reinstating the fact that the leaders are the ones which will tend to give you more stability, and there is always a higher probability of a bounce, or a strong pickup and rally into the leader stocks. So I think in that aspect, Dr. Reddy looks very attractive. In terms of targets, I believe there is a multiple top hurdle, a short-term hurdle around the 5,500 mark, and the stock would probably try and take some time to break past about the 5,500. If the breakout happens, and whenever the breakout happens, I believe that the next set of targets for Dr. Reddy could be in the tune of 6,000, 6,200 levels.
Gaurang, coming to you on this next one, we've got Abhishek on YouTube who's asking about the long-term prospects for Bank of Baroda. And it seems like some of these PSU banks have woken from a long slumber, haven't they? Over the last month or so, BOB has gained about 20%. But are you confident about this particular bank from the PSU banking pack for the long term?
So Alex, there was a long period of time wherein most of your public sector banks had gone into hibernation, and I would not be wrong if I use that word. But given the policy changes, decisions by the government to merge public sector banks, make it into a stronger entity, get rid of, lesser known, weaker balance sheet public sector banks, has augured well, in fact, and Bank of Baroda is also one of them, wherein we had the merger of Vijaya Bank, if I'm not mistaken, and Dena Bank merging into Bank of Baroda quite some time back. So as a brokerage house, we maintain a positive view. There are three banks that we are positive on amongst the public sector bank as a brokerage house, Jyothy Financial Services, and Bank of Baroda happens to be one of them. This could be a slow mover given the headwinds that one expects in the first quarter numbers for banking and financials this financial year. But I think we should be heading towards 115, 125. And if the earnings improve, then definitely the target gets revised upwards.
The next query is coming in from a viewer with a very interesting handle name, and his handle name is Free Ed. Next time, I request you to please put in your name as well. He is talking about Highfield stock, Kunal, and I'll come to you for this. He's saying the stock is more bullish after breaking their lifetime highs of 206 rupees per share. That was in October 2018. He's saying, as per technicals, they're saying that such bull run will actually endlessly see the stock seeing gains of about 2 times, so approximately a target of 400 rupees per share. He's asking, is it possible for the stock to surge so much without seeing any correction or any sort of a consolidation? So what is the chart actually saying for Highfield?
It's interesting. So there are two parts to this question. One, where I believe that whether the stock will hit back to that 400 mark, and the second would be probably that how would the journey be. Now, look at the last 2 months. The past 2 months for Highfield have been just about a revolution. From a level of 150, 160, it's jumped up to almost 340 rupees on like a parabolic fashion. Now, these are generally trend changing moves which happen to the stocks, and these kind of moves, they generally take the shift the range much higher to the stock prices over the medium term to long term. So for the first part of the question, that whether the stock would hit back to that 400 mark, I would sense that it can also go beyond that 400 level, given the kind of market circumstance we are in, and assuming that the circumstance from the mid cap and small cap would remain favorable. So looking at the charts, I believe that the prospects are pretty high. Now, whether the stock will go through a correction, now that's very difficult to say. These stocks, they generally have a tendency of going through either a time correction or a price correction. So it's difficult to anticipate that what would come for a stock like Highfield. But nevertheless, I think if you've bought at lower levels, or if you're looking to buy, then a staggered buy on dips approach could be a good approach for the stock.
Okay, coming to you on this next one, Gaurang. Granules India has had quite the run over the last year. It's a doubler, but we've got Padma, who's bought at levels of 310, not very far from where the stock is currently trading. She's asking if she should hold or if she should switch out to something else.
Reason to switch out, because on the fundamental we are extremely positive on Granules India. And US, you are absolutely right. There's been a stellar run for Granules India for the last about 8 or 9 months. Then the stock has gone into consolidation. There were certain news flows. But the investment at 310, I believe there is enough comfort zone wherein your risk reward is extremely favorable towards reward. We have a target of 380 to 400 on Granules India from a mid to long term point of view.
From Tony Anthony, he wants a view on Route Mobile for the longer term, like for 5 years. He's actually holding 50 shares, which he's bought at 1,520 rupees per share. He also wants to know what sort of levels that he should look at if he wants to average this particular stock. Gaurang, what's your view coming in on Route Mobile? Are you bullish on the stock for the longer term?
Well, unfortunately, don't have coverage on this one, so won't be able to comment on share.
All right. Kunal, would you like to take this one on Route Mobile? How are the charts looking for this counter?
Cheryl, it's a recently listed name, just about I think 7-8 months of price history, so won't be able to really comment on the much longer perspective. But then in terms of the second part of the question, that what could be better levels to enter the stock, there was a very recent breakout in the month of February for Route Mobile around this 1200-1250 zone. And from there, you saw two changes happening to the stock prices. One of them was the change in trajectory of the prices, where you saw the stock moving from a narrow price range to a much more broader price range. And the second was where you saw volume pickup happening for Route Mobile. So I think that level of 1200, 1250 would probably act as a good support zone. Now the stock is consolidating and going through a corrective phase. I would sense that have a buy on dips approach. You can start at current levels, but the maximum quantity which you should be looking to buy should be at this 1200 1250 zone for root.
Okay, one of the disappointments, and you can call it that because it's a terrible underperformer. Tata Motors down nearly 5% in trade today. But I think Pawan Kunal was very bullish on the stock. He bought June call option 400 strike, and he's well, it's a little stretched at this point, isn't it? What should he do with this trade?
I think 400 seems to be a bit stretched, trade for Tata Motors. And I think, there is one very important observation which advice that I will give it to, all of the viewers, that whenever you're looking to trade in options, specifically just prior to an event, or a result, or monthly sales numbers, etc., it's going to be very, very tricky and very risky. So I understand that maybe the 400 call options for June would have cost you much less in terms of premium, but then you also have to gauge that whether it's just a punt which you have taken, or whether this is a strategic call which you have taken expecting the stock would gradually move up higher. I for one believe that the stock would now consolidate over here. The auto stocks in the auto sector overall are also going through a period of a painful correction consolidation. So that would probably take some bit of more time. So maybe over the next couple of weeks, you might see the stock Tata Motors hanging around this 310, 300 kind of range for some more time. So I would suggest that rather than looking at deep out of the money call options, it's important to try and time these call options buy, and specifically in terms of breakout. The breakout for Tata Motors is about 350 levels. Would suggest a buy on call option only if the stock breaks above the 350 mark.
All right. Our next query is coming in from Sagar, and before I go on with Sagar's query, I would like to congratulate Sagar on this holding, and that's because he wants his view on Tata Elxsi. He's bought 500 shares at 750 rupees per share. As we all know, the stock has actually zoomed past those levels. He wants to know whether he should continue to hold on to it or should he book out profits. Kunal, what's your take on Tata Elxsi?
An exceptional performer, and again, even I would want to congratulate to the viewer for holding on to the stock. So it's not just about holding on to a stock which has moved from 700, but to hold on to a stock patiently from 700 to even a level of 4,000, I think is commendable. So I think it's done an exceptional job, and I think now once the stock has set its tone over the last 1 years of moving up significantly higher to 4,000 levels, it's natural that the stock would consolidate. So don't have a short-term time horizon. You've managed to have a lot of buffer and cushion for your holdings. I would suggest that now look at this as more of a longer-term story for the next 3 years, 5 years plus kind of a story. And I, for one, believe that the stock and the entire space of IT, both the large caps and specifically the mid cap names, I think they should do exceptionally well over the next 3 to 5 years. So I would suggest a hold on the holdings for Tata Elxsi.
It's very interesting, and I want to make an exception on this and come to you on this as well, Gaurang, because if you've invested from the perspective of fundamentals and you don't have a specific target in mind, does this stock, considering the kind of move that it has made, become a portfolio stock that you hold in your portfolio for the long term, considering the kind of returns that it has given?
Well, Alex, I would definitely agree with your statement. And when you buy strong companies with great management and growth visibility, and if I have to just reflect upon not only the last couple of quarters but last couple of years earning capability for Tata Elxsi, then it has done phenomenally well and it continues to deliver. And equally strong was the management commentary in terms of how they want to take their business forward. So when you are, and that's the beauty of stock market, Alex. You buy great companies, you hold on to it. Don't dabble in it. Don't try to sell it at higher level and buy it at lower level, because you may end up losing your investment in that kind of a process. And also, Alex, I would like to say one thing. Don't try to sell your portfolio stocks against the punting bet which you would have taken. I'm talking about short term, medium term, because a lot of investors end up doing that. You buy stock from an intraday or a short term perspective, making loss. You take delivery of that stock by selling strong, fundamentally sound stocks in your portfolio. I think it's the greatest mistakes that investors do. Try to refrain from such activities and continue to hold.
Gaurang, I'll come to you with this next query, and this one is coming from Anup Kumar. He wants a long-term view on Philip Carbon.
Well, we had coverage, Cheryl, a while back, but then the targets were placed and we did not revisit the coverage. Unfortunately, the regulations also don't permit me, since we don't have a coverage currently on Philips Carbon.
Kunal, what's your view on Philip Carbon? Do you cover the stock?
Yeah, I do track the stock. Again, a mid-cap name has done pretty well for itself from the March 2020 lows, and now I think the stock is going through a very steady kind of an uptrend. 2 days back, I think yesterday or day before, you had seen a strong volume pickup for Philip Carbon. But these are the kind of stocks, and at least the history of the stock indicates that you should typically not tend to buy the stock when at a peak of its momentum, but you have to wait for the stocks to come back to a support level. The stock has a tendency of coming back time and again towards its 50-day moving average, to consolidate over there and then try and restart its uptrend. So if that's the process, then I would suggest not to buy at current levels, but then wait for the stock to come back to its 50-day moving average. Currently, I think the average is placed at around 200, 205 levels. So it's a much better entry point if you look to buy on dips, specifically this one.
Kunal, speaking of entry points, Anjali's got Wellspun India, but she's bought at levels of 96. Would you, or rather, she's bought at levels of 90, which is not too far away from the current market price. Considering the kind of move that we've seen over the past year, do you think that she should hold on to this?
So I think specifically for Wellspun India, it's a breakout candidate, because I remember, I think from 2016 or 17 highs, somewhere the stock had taken multiple resistance at the 90 zone. So I'm sensing that probably the reason for the entry, if it's more technical, could have been this multi-year breakout for Wellspun India. Now I think what could probably happen is that 90 or 88 zone could actually act as a support or a trailing stop loss for your trade, for the stock. So I would suggest that you can hold on to this, investment or short-term trading bet which you've taken for Wellspun India. Keep that 88 or 90 zone as a strong support zone or a stop loss zone. If the stock manages to break that on the lower side, then you can look at exiting. But if it manages to continue to hold on to that zone of 88, 90, then I believe even prospective 110, 115 could be possible for the stock.
All right, we've got a query coming in from, it's an email query coming in from Raghavendra, saying that he has a Wockhardt Pharma. He's got 510, he's bought shares at 510 rupees per share. He wants to know whether he should book profits or he should continue to hold on to it. And if hold on to it, what sort of a target should he aim at for Wockhardt Pharma? Kunal, what's your take on Wockhardt?
Well, I for one believe, I was in fact just doing this assessment on charts for Wockhardt Pharma, and there's very interesting technical pattern. So from 560, which was I think a 2-month high for Wockhardt Pharma, it had fell down and come back to 400 levels. So it's almost a retracement of 160 rupees. Now in just a matter of 1 or 2 months post that, you've seen the stock breaking up above that 550 level and crossing even 100 rupees above that, which means technically the stock, whenever it falls by that 160, 170 points, it tends to replicate the same profit potential on the upside. So if you try and do the math, it comes out to around 720, 725 as a potential target zone for Wockhardt Pharma, which means possibly another 10% on the upside over the near term. So I would suggest a hold on Wockhardt Pharma and would expect at least a 700 to 720 as a potential near term target range.
Okay, sorry Gaurang to keep you waiting. Rekha's got a question for you. Which chemical company would you put money in?
Agrochemicals is something that we are extremely positive on, Alex, and we have coverage on PI Industries, Aarti Industries, Tata Chemicals, Pidilite, UPL. If I have to select one or two of them in terms of priority, then Tata Chemicals and possibly PI Industries would be the shortlisted names.
Gaurang, this one is for you as well. This is from Radesh. He wants to know what's the view on Adani Green Energy. He wants to know whether he can continue to hold on to the stock till 2025. Fundamentally, how strong is Adani Green? Definitely, we've seen that acquisition today also as well.
Cheryl, Adani Green, Adani Port, Adani Enterprises, these are some of the companies in the Adani group which has given a stellar performer. Not that others have not, others have also performed well, but these 2 or 3 companies have done reasonably well or maybe outperformed. Once again, because of regulation, I can't comment specific on buy, sell and hold since we don't have a coverage.
Okay, let's talk about Balaji Amines then. Gaurang, do you have coverage on Balaji Amines? We've got a viewer that has bought the counter. Should they hold for the long term or should they sell? They've been holding since 2012.
Unfortunately, over here again, no coverage, Alex, so I won't be specific. Sorry for that.
Fair enough. Kunal, I'll come. Fair enough. Kunal, I'll come to you on this one. This is a long-term investor. Joby Sebastian's been holding since 2012. Would you hold on to this one or would you sell?
An absolute delight, for the stock. I remember, I think from 2010-11, zone, that stock was just about paltry 25-30 rupees, and from there it's now 2,700 plus in terms of levels. So I think it's been an exceptional performer. Done phenomenally well. I would strongly suggest that you take out partial or majority of your profits over here. The reasons why I say that is because the monthly RSI, and this is for a change, has hit back towards that 90 to 94 zone. So it's extremely overbought on the monthly and the the longer term charts. So I think purely on that aspect, I would suggest the viewer to try and book out profits. I know that you are a long-term investor, but sometimes these overbought conditions, they result into some very dramatic reversals towards the stock prices. So just as a precautionary, I think it's prudent enough to try and take out at least partial profits on your investments for Balaji Amines.
All right, our next actually query is coming in from an investor, Sandeep. He's saying that he's holding L&T Finance for the longer term. He's bought it at a higher level, but he wants to know whether he can continue to hold on to the stock. How does it look fundamentally? Should he stay put in L&T Finance? Gaurang, what's your view on L&T Finance?
Well, extremely positive, Cheryl, and we've been maintaining a positive view for a pretty long period of time. And for all those investors who got invested in L&T Finance at higher level, my humble request and advice would be that if not 100%, then at least 50 to 70%, if you have investable capital, then below 80 and closer to 70, unfortunately I don't have the price where the stock is trading at, but below 80 and closer to 70, I think the downside looks extremely protected. And if you do get those levels, then please average maybe 50%, 70% or even 100% if you have long-term time horizon and with capital with a longer term time horizon.
Okay, unfortunately, we're completely out of time on this edition of Buy Now Sell Now's query segment. To all those of you who've tuned in and haven't gotten your queries answered, apologies. We'll be back tomorrow and we promise to take as many as possible. Gaurang, Kunal, thank you so much for taking the time and for answering the questions that you did answer. As of now, let me introduce you to the management of Jyothy Labs. They're joining in to speak to us. Ullas Kamath, who's joint managing director, is joining in. I'd like to start by asking Mr. Kamath, if you could tell us about the current demand trends that you're witnessing. How has the current wave of the pandemic affected the demand scenario for Jyothy Labs, and what is the recovery that you are likely to see?
For the current quarter, we have shown a sales of about 500 crore. It's 27.3% up when compared to the same quarter last time. And EBITDA is at 14.3%. For the whole year, it is at 16.5%. Again, it has gone up. And profit before tax for the current year is 56.3%, up by 142%. And even overall, if you take for the year, the company has grown 13.1% and the PAT is up by 17%. And in the current quarter, there's one exceptional item. It's a non-cash item of 23.5% and 23.5 crore. And hence the profit is at after tax at 27.3%. So the trend looks very positive. We have been clocking double-digit growth right from the first lockdown, and it is continuing now. And when compared to the COVID first wave and the second wave, I think every one of us are well prepared, and the supply chain is in a perfect condition. All our manufacturing facilities, barring one, is functioning 100% capacity. Demand both from rural and urban is intact, and rural continues to do shade better than urban. And in urban, modern trade was back till the lockdown was declared in some of the states in the country today, but otherwise, modern trade has started doing very well during the year.
Mr. Kamath, the household insecticide segment accounts for about 11% of your sales and it has continued to grow. Do you